Imagine living a life where, like, absolutely everything you present to the world is just a carefully constructed lie.
Right.
Every polite smile you give at a dinner party, every measured conversation you have at work, even the daily interactions with your own family, it's all a meticulously rehearsed performance.
Yeah, that's a heavy thought.
It is, right.
Yeah.
The terrifying part isn't even the lying itself. It's that your only actual truth, the single thing that makes you feel genuinely alive, is a secret you have to guard like a thief in the night.
Wow. Yeah.
So put yourself in that headspace for a second.
Yeah.
How long could you sustain that kind of fractured existence before the sheer weight of the deception just completely crushed you?
Honestly, it's an almost impossible psychological burden. I mean, we operate under this collective assumption that living authentically, out in the open is the ultimate baseline for a healthy human life. But what happens when the very architecture of the society you live in, the rigid expectations, the marriage you've built, the social standing you rely on. What if all of that makes authenticity not just difficult, but entirely dangerous?
You'd have to hide.
Exactly. You end up bifurcating. You split yourself into two completely separate entities, right? The socially acceptable phantom and then the hidden authentic self.
And that profound psychological fracture is exactly the engine driving the narrative we are analyzing today. Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today, our mission is to step into the world of Anton Chekhov's 1899 masterpiece of short fiction, The Lady with the Dog.
Such a brilliant piece of work.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we've got comprehensive summaries and full textual readings of the story on the table today, but we aren't just recounting a 19th century romance here.
No, definitely not.
This story is essentially a Trojan horse. It masquerades as the standard, somewhat predictable tale of a vacation affair. But the moment you peel back that top layer, you are plunged into this devastating philosophical exploration.
Yeah, it really goes deep into existentialism, the absurdity of social norms, and just the total insignificance of human drama when placed against the vastness of nature.
So to understand how those massive philosophical concepts actually play out, I feel like we have to start by dissecting the man at the center of the deception.
Right, Dmitri Gurov.
Yes, Dmitri Gurov. Chekhov sets him up as this Moscow banker approaching 40.
Which, in the late 19th century, a man approaching 40 is firmly entrenched in middle age. He's established.
He's got the whole setup.
Exactly. He has a 12-year-old daughter, 2 sons in school, a respectable career. Yet when we first meet him, he is vacationing completely alone in the seaside resort town of Yalta.
Just totally isolated.
Yeah, and that geographical isolation really mirrors his profound emotional isolation, which stems directly from his deeply flawed domestic life.
His marriage is fascinating, honestly. It's like a textbook case of two people who are just fundamentally incompatible trying to assert dominance over one another.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he was married off young, still a student in his second year of university. And you can really sense he feels trapped by that lack of early agency, right?
Yeah, he never really had a choice.
Exactly. And now, his wife perceives herself as this imposing, towering intellectual force. She's described as tall, with dark eyebrows, carrying herself with this rigid, stern demeanor. She literally calls herself a thinker.
And the specifics of how she presents herself are incredibly revealing. I mean, she insists on calling him Dmitri with this highly affected, overly formal pronunciation, rather than the standard Dmitri.
Right.
But more tellingly, she writes her letters using an outdated, archaic orthography.
Okay, let's pause on that detail for a second, because I feel like modern readers might just gloss right over archaic orthography. Like, why does the way she spells words matter so much to Gurov's psychological state?
It's a brilliant, subtle mechanism of control. In the context of 1890s Russia, using an outdated spelling system wasn't just like a quirk.
It wasn't just her being bad at spelling.
No, it was a deliberate, performative, intellectual stance. It was her way of aligning herself with a specific, rigid, perhaps overly academic or conservative elite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's performative superiority. She is constantly signaling to her husband that she operates on a higher intellectual and moral plane than he does. She isn't actually communicating with him, she's performing her intellect at him.
That is so toxic. It's like someone today who insists on using impenetrable academic jargon in casual conversation at the dinner table.
Right. It's exhausting.
It isn't meant to foster connection at all. It's meant to build a wall and establish dominance. So it's really no wonder Gurov is secretly terrified of her. He avoids going home whenever possible because his home is basically a battleground of quiet condescension.
And that environment creates the perfect breeding ground for his coping mechanism, which is serial philandering. Gurov has been cheating on his wife for a very long time.
Yeah, he's a professional at this point.
He is, but Chekhov doesn't just present him as a one-dimensional scoundrel. He introduces this really profound paradox in Gurov's psyche.
Right.
Among men, Gurov is bored to the point of catatonia. He finds male company tedious, he feels cold, constrained, he barely speaks. Yet, when he's with other men, he openly and arrogantly refers to women as the lower race or the inferior race.
See, I found that psychological knot completely absorbing. He sits around disparaging women to his male peers, probably trying to project this air of worldly cynicism, right? Like he's trying to convince himself that his past bitter experiences have given him some supreme authority to judge them. But the absolute second he is actually in the presence of women, his entire physiological and mental state shifts.
He comes completely alive.
He does. He feels free. He can sit in total silence with a woman and feel perfectly natural, whereas a conversation with a man feels like a cage to him.
It's classic projection masking a deep-seated vulnerability. His cynicism is just his armor. By labeling women the lower race, he is desperately trying to maintain a sense of control over the very demographic he is completely helplessly dependent upon for any sense of vitality.
Which is terrifying for him.
Exactly. He needs women to feel alive, which is a terrifying dependency for a man who views himself as an established, logical banker. He convinces himself he has the whole game figured out, you know.
Right.
He assumes his past affairs, which, by the way, always started light and fun before inevitably devolving into heavy, exhausting burdens. He thinks those experiences have taught him the definitive truth about human connection.
He genuinely believes he's just above the emotional fray.
Yeah.
It's impossible not to draw a line between Gurov and a very specific archetype we see in modern dating culture.
Oh, the dating app cynic.
Yes. Think of the person who endlessly swipes on dating apps, right? Constantly complaining to anyone who will listen about how terrible the dating pool is, how superficial everyone has become, how true romance is completely dead.
Yeah, the everyone is terrible speech.
Exactly. They project this hypercynical, detached persona, claiming they're only looking for something casual because, like, people are just too exhausting.
Yet they never delete the apps.
Never. They can't delete them because beneath all that performed cynicism is a ravenous, entirely unacknowledged hunger for actual, meaningful connection.
Right.
They are terrified of being vulnerable, so they play the detached critic, just like Gurov calling women the lower race while constantly seeking them out.
It's a defense mechanism that ensures you never have to fully invest, which means you never have to be fully broken.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, so Gurov arrives in Yalta fully wrapped in this armor of cynical boredom. He views Yalta not as a real place, but as a liminal space.
Like a bubble.
Exactly. Resort towns often function this way. They are transitional realms geographically and psychologically removed from the rigid social structures of the metropolis. In Yalta, the rules of reality, the consequences of Moscow society, they just seem temporarily suspended.
It's totally the 19th century equivalent of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Perfect analogy.
People invent new versions of themselves, they indulge in petty gossip, they act entirely out of character because the environment practically demands it. And into this suspended reality walks the disruption.
The lady with the dog.
Yes, a young blonde woman of average height, wearing a beret, walking along the promenade, followed by a small white Pomeranian.
And the local gossips, lacking any actual information about her, just reduce her to a pure archetype, right? The lady with the dog.
Right.
Gurov, operating firmly within his predatory, detached mindset, observes her dining alone. He notes her respectable appearance, deduces she's likely married, and immediately categorizes her as a prime candidate for a fleeting, uncomplicated vacation romance.
He's just scanning for a target.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He uses a bone to lure the Pomeranian over, strikes up a conversation, and the machinery of the affair begins.
So we learn her name is Anna Sergeyevna. She grew up in the cultural hub of Petersburg, but now lives in a quiet provincial town called S, where she's been married for 2 years. And a massive indicator of her own detachment from her life is that she doesn't even know what her husband actually does at his government job.
She can't remember his exact title.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
So they walk, they observe the strange, surreal light on the water. This beautiful, warm purple sea bisected by a golden strip of moonlight, and inevitably, the slow dance ends in her stifling hot hotel room.
And this hotel room scene, I mean, it provides one of the most brilliant philosophically dense moments in Chekhov's entire body of work.
It really does.
The affair has just been consummated, but instead of the typical romantic afterglow, Chekhov presents us with a collision of two entirely incompatible moral universes.
The contrast is just jarring. Anna is completely undone. The imagery Chekhov uses is striking. She's sitting there with her hair hanging down mournfully, looking exactly like a sinner in an old painting.
Yeah.
There's a single dim candle burning on the table, casting these harsh, dramatic shadows, and the air is thick with the scent of Japanese perfume. She's practically vibrating with existential guilt.
She interprets this event as a catastrophic moral fall. She confesses to Gurov that she has been deceiving herself for a long time in her marriage, driven by an insatiable, restless curiosity for a better life.
Right, she wanted more.
Yeah, she admits she doesn't respect her husband, calling him a good man, but ultimately just a flunky, like a subservient functionary.
Ouch.
But because she is utterly trapped within the rigid 19th century societal framework of religious and moral purity, she cannot view her actions as a search for freedom. She views them as a cosmic failure.
She blames the devil. She blames her own wicked nature. She claims she has lost all self-respect.
She is having a total spiritual meltdown.
Total meltdown. And how does Gurov, our worldly experienced banker, react to this intense outpouring of feminine grief?
Well, he doesn't panic.
No, he doesn't rush to hold her and offer sweet platitudes. He calmly walks over to a table, cuts himself a slice of watermelon, and sits there eating it, slowly, in complete silence, for half an hour.
Half an hour of weeping, punctuated only by the sound of a man chewing fruit.
I mean, I have to challenge Gurov's behavior here. On a purely human level, it looks like borderline sociopathy.
It does seem cold.
Right. A woman is sitting in front of him, experiencing what she genuinely believes is the destruction of her moral soul, and he is slurping on a piece of fruit. Are we supposed to view him as a monster? Or is there a deeper philosophical statement happening beneath the watermelon?
Well, viewing him as a monster requires us to judge him using Anna's moral framework, which is exactly the framework Chekhov is trying to dismantle here.
Okay, interesting.
Think about Gurov's history. He has lived through countless affairs. He has seen the full spectrum of postcoital reactions, women who act out hysterical guilt, women who love coldly and greedily, women who demand endless reassurance.
He's seen it all.
Right. So to his experienced eye, Anna's reaction isn't genuine moral destruction. It is sudden, melodramatic, and incredibly naive. Honestly, it just bores him.
Wow. So the watermelon is just a physical manifestation of his refusal to participate in her melodrama.
Precisely. The watermelon represents the absolute unyielding indifference of physical, biological reality to our imagined, socially constructed moral crises.
Right.
Anna is trapped in a mental cage. She's weeping over an abstract concept of sin dictated by a society that doesn't actually care about her happiness at all.
Yeah.
Gurov, conversely, is completely grounded in the physical reality of the moment. The room is hot, they just engaged in a base biological act, and he is thirsty. The slow, methodical chewing is Chekhov's way of demonstrating that the physical world simply goes on, entirely unimpressed by human agonizing.
That reframes the scene entirely for me. It makes me think of those moments when you're going through a massive, earth-shattering personal crisis, like your world feels like it's ending,
Yeah.
and then you look out the window and the mail carrier is just walking up the driveway, dropping off circulars, the stray cat is sunbathing on the fence.
The world doesn't stop.
Exactly. The realization that the physical universe does not halt for your internal agony can feel deeply insulting at first, but it's also undeniably true.
Yes, and Chekhov immediately expands on that exact concept, the indifference of the physical world, by transitioning them out of that claustrophobic, perfume-choked hotel room. Gurov eventually manages to soothe her, they laugh, and they decide to take a carriage ride out of Yalta to a spot called Oryanda.
And this scene at Oryanda is where the philosophical underpinnings of the narrative really break the surface.
Big time.
They sit on a bench near a church, looking down at the sea and the distant twinkling lights of Yalta below them. They're just sitting there absorbing the atmosphere, and Chekhov drops this incredibly profound passage regarding the roar of the sea.
They listen to the continuous, monotonous, muffled roar coming from the deep water, and Gurov experiences this moment of profound existential clarity.
It's beautiful.
It is. He reflects on the fact that the sea roared exactly like this long before the town of Yalta was built, long before the first humans settled in Oryanda. It is roaring in this exact moment as they sit on the bench. And it will continue to roar with that exact same terrifying apathy long after both he and Anna are dead buried and utterly forgotten.
It is just the purest distillation of existential dread. The realization that the universe, nature, the cosmos, whatever you want to call it, does not care about your bank job, your provincial marriage, or your profound feelings of moral guilt.
You are a temporary speck.
Literally a speck.
But what makes Chekhov a master is how he subverts our expectation of that realization. Typically, when we confront the apathy of nature, we frame it as deeply depressing, right?
Yeah, it's usually terrifying.
It triggers modern nihilism, the fear that because the universe doesn't care, nothing we do matters. But Gurov's internal monologue suggests something radically different.
What does he find in it?
He suggests that within this continuous, indifferent movement of the sea, within its total apathy toward individual human lives, lies the actual guarantee of life's eternal salvation and continuous progress.
Okay, I really want to dig into that because it sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah.
How does the universe's absolute disregard for us equate to our salvation?
Yeah. Because if the vast eternal sea doesn't care about the petty societal rules we've invented, our strict marriage laws, our rigid concepts of sin, our obsession with social status, then those rules are revealed as fundamentally arbitrary.
Oh, I see.
The sea's eternal roar washes away the artificiality of human constraints. It proves that the foundation of the world is stable, eternal, and deeply beautiful, completely independent of the messy, dramatic little plays we constantly put on for each other.
That makes a lot of sense. Sitting there in the dawn light, looking at this majestic scenery alongside this beautiful young woman, Gurov feels a sudden transcendent sense of peace. He realizes that everything in the world is genuinely beautiful when we actually take the time to reflect on it.
Yes.
The only thing that isn't beautiful is what we do when we forget our higher purposes and our human dignity.
And that phrase, human dignity, is paramount here. In the face of the sea's majesty, all his sneaking around in Moscow, his cynical posturing at the club, his arrogant labeling of women as a lower race, it suddenly appears entirely undignified to him.
It just looks small.
Very small. It's a flash of transcendent clarity where he sees the ridiculousness of his own protective facade.
Think about the times in your own life when you've experienced something similar. Psychologists sometimes refer to it as the overview effect when talking about astronauts looking back at Earth, but we can experience it on a smaller scale.
Definitely.
Standing at the edge of a massive canyon or being out in the wilderness, looking up at a sky completely saturated with stars, you feel entirely dwarfed. You realize your insignificance. Yet, strangely, it doesn't induce panic.
It's deeply soothing.
Right. Suddenly, the fact that you stumbled over your words in a meeting or that you're worried about hitting a quarterly target, it just evaporates. The grand scale of the universe grants you permission to stop sweating the artificial details of modern life.
It is a profound awakening for Gurov, but awakenings are notoriously difficult to sustain when you return to the machinery of daily life.
Always.
The Yalta bubble inevitably pops. Anna receives a frantic letter from her husband urging her to return to S because an issue with his eyes has worsened.
Reality calls.
Reality calls. At the train station, as she leaves, she tells Gurov that they were parting forever. She frames the affair as a fleeting madness, just a temporary lapse in her otherwise structured life.
And Gurov accepts this. He returns to Moscow, stepping off the train into the freezing winter. The sensory transition Chekhov uses here is brilliant.
It really is.
We move from the warm purple waters and blooming flowers of Yalta to the dark, frosty mornings, the sound of sleigh runners on packed snow, the heavy, smoky smell of Moscow in winter. Gurov slots right back into his old, comfortable groove.
He goes back to his routine.
Yeah, he reads 3 newspapers a day, visits his exclusive clubs, eats heavy, rich meals, and plays endless games of cards. He fully expects that within a month or so, the memory of Anna will fade away, transitioning into a nostalgic, slightly melancholic memory, just like every other affair he's ever had.
But the psychology of memory is unpredictable. The memory doesn't fade. It metastasizes. It begins to consume him.
He can't shake it.
Not at all. He hears her breathing when he is alone in his study. He hallucinates her face in the dark. He finds himself following women on the street who possess even a passing resemblance to her.
Wow.
Yeah, the vibrant living memory of his time in Yalta gradually becomes more real and tangible to him than his actual physical life in Moscow.
He is overflowing with this agonizing poetic feeling, and he desperately needs an outlet. He needs to share the weight of this experience with someone.
Naturally.
Obviously, his wife is out of the question.
Yeah.
But then he realizes a much darker truth. He has no actual friend.
No.
He is surrounded by acquaintances, business partners, and card-playing companions, but no one he can actually speak to about his soul. Which brings us to the rotten fish awakening.
This is perhaps one of the most critical turning points in the narrative, and it hinges entirely on the concept of the absurd.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Well, existential crises are rarely triggered by grand operatic tragedies. They are usually ignited by a mundane, seemingly insignificant detail that suddenly highlights the grotesque nature of reality.
Picture the scene, right? Gurov is leaving the medical club late at night. He is walking alongside a government official he had just spent hours playing cards with. Gurov's chest is practically bursting with this profound love and longing for Anna.
He's desperate.
They can't hold the secret in for one more second. As they're getting into their respective sleighs, he turns to this official and blurts out, "If you only knew what a fascinating woman I met in Yalta."
He's reaching out.
He is offering this man a glimpse into his soul. He is extending a hand, desperate for a moment of shared human empathy.
How does the official respond? He completely ignores the emotional weight of the statement.
Completely ignores it.
He climbs into his sleigh, the horses start to pull away, and then he suddenly turns and yells back, "Dmitri, you were right yesterday. The sturgeon was tainted."
The sturgeon was tainted.
Or the fish was rotten, depending on the translation.
Unbelievable. Gurov offers up the most profound, life-altering emotional experience of his entire existence. And the universe, in the form of this bureaucrat, responds with a review of yesterday's seafood dinner.
It is a devastating cosmic joke.
It really is.
The internal violence of Gurov's reaction to this mundane comment cannot be overstated. It acts as a catalyst, sparking a full-blown existential crisis. The blinders are violently ripped off.
He sees everything clearly now.
He does. He looks at his life in Moscow, the life he considered stable and respectable, and he is overcome with intense disgust. He sees what he calls the savage morals, the endless gluttony, the mindless card playing, and the repetitive, utterly useless conversations that consume their days.
It is the ultimate red pill moment.
Yeah.
He suddenly perceives the matrix of his own bourgeois existence. Let's translate this to a modern context so you can really feel the weight of it.
Yeah, that helps.
Imagine you've just returned from a deeply transformative experience. Maybe you spent a month off the grid, climbing a mountain, or doing intense meditation. You feel entirely connected to the vastness of the universe. Your priorities are crystal clear.
You're elevated.
Exactly. And then Monday morning rolls around. You are sitting in a windowless corporate conference room under fluorescent lights, and you watch your adult colleagues spend 3 agonizing, passionate hours debating whether the font on a PowerPoint slide should be Arial or Calibri.
In that moment, the cognitive dissonance would be deafening. You would look around and think, what are we doing? Is this what human life is supposed to be? Is this what we trade our limited time on Earth for?
Exactly. Gurov realizes he is living what Chekhov calls a clipped, wingless existence. He understands that all this useless talk, all this posturing and gluttony eats up the best, most vibrant hours of a person's life, leaving behind nothing but a mutilated, nonsensical reality.
Let's analyze how this functions within the broader philosophical argument of the story. The realization isn't just about his longing for Anna. The comment about the rotten fish forces Gurov to confront the existential horror of the everyday.
The mundane horror.
Exactly. The mundane banality of his routine is suddenly revealed as an asylum, a prison of meaninglessness from which he feels he cannot escape. He realizes he has spent 40 years building a life that is entirely hollow.
40 years?
Yeah. The society he operates within places absolutely no value on the human soul, the intellect, or genuine emotional connection. It values status, conformity, card games, and the freshness of the fish at the club.
And the terror of that realization is that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You can't go back to pretending the card game matters.
No, you can't.
Gurov can't sleep, he can't function at the bank, he actively despises his life. Driven by this overwhelming dread and this desperate need for the authenticity he tasted in Yalta, he lies to his wife. He tells her he is going to Petersburg for business.
But he doesn't.
No. Instead, he boards a train heading for S, Anna's provincial town. He has no concrete plan. He doesn't know what he will do when he gets there. He just knows he has to find her.
His arrival in S introduces us to the most powerful, resonant visual metaphor in the entire narrative.
Yes, the setting here is so important.
He checks into a dismal, depressing room in a cheap local hotel. The details here emphasize the lack of vitality in this town. The bed has a cheap gray blanket that looks like it belongs in a hospital, and on the desk sits a dusty inkstand shaped like a headless horseman.
The Headless Horseman.
It's a brilliant, subtle touch, right? It symbolizes a life lacking intellectual direction, driven only by blind, mechanical routine. So Gurov finds out where Anna lives and walks to her street.
And when he locates her house, he is confronted with a massive physical barrier. Running the entire length opposite her home is a long gray fence, heavily studded with nails.
The gray fence with nails, it is impossible to overstate the symbolic architecture in this object. Gurov paces back and forth on the street, staring at it, and he feels an intense, visceral hatred for it.
He hates it.
He imagines Anna, day after day, waking up and being forced to look at this aggressive, dull, impenetrable barrier.
It is the perfect physical manifestation of societal repression. It represents the rigid, inescapable laws of her marriage, the stifling nature of provincial life, and the strict moral boundaries that keep them apart.
Absolutely.
It isn't a beautiful, ornate wrought iron fence. It is gray, meaning it's boring and devoid of life. And it has nails in it, meaning it is designed to inflict pain on anyone who attempts to climb over it or dismantle it.
It is the architecture of a caged life. Standing before it, Gurov realizes the impossibility of a direct approach. He can't simply knock on her door. Her husband might be home, the servants would see, and it would trigger a catastrophic scandal that would ruin her.
He has to be careful.
So he retreats. He hopes for a chance encounter in the streets, but none comes. Finally, he remembers seeing an enormous poster at the train station advertising the local premiere of an operetta, The Geisha.
You formed his plan.
Right. Reasoning that the provincial elite would undoubtedly attend the only cultural event in town, he buys a ticket and goes to the theater.
Chekhov's description of this provincial theater is a masterclass in establishing a suffocating atmosphere. He paints a picture of utter depressing mediocrity.
It's so bleak.
There's a strange haze of smoke or fog lingering near the chandelier. The local dandies are standing around the lobby, desperately trying to look important in a town that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The town governor is awkwardly hiding behind a curtain in his box, paralyzed by some bizarre sense of false provincial modesty. The orchestra is terrible, the violins sound cheap and screechy. It is the absolute pinnacle of small-town cultural suffocation.
And into this haze of mediocrity walks Anna. She takes a seat in the third row. When Gurov sees her, his physical reaction is intense. His heart starts hammering against his ribs.
He's completely overwhelmed.
He realizes in that single moment, looking at this ordinary woman holding a cheap pair of opera glasses, completely lost in this unremarkable crowd, that she is the center of his universe. She is his entire joy, his sorrow, the only thing that injects any meaning into his life.
But the tension spikes because we finally get our first actual look at the husband, the man Anna tearfully referred to as a flunky back in Yalta.
Oh, the flunky. Yes.
And the visual description validates everything she said. He is tall, slightly stooped, with small sideburns. But the defining feature is his face. He wears this perpetual sweet, painfully servile smile.
Servile, exactly.
And the ultimate detail. He is wearing some kind of academic or bureaucratic badge in his buttonhole, which Gurov immediately notes looks exactly like a servant's tag.
That detail about the badge is crucial for understanding Chekhov's critique of the bureaucracy. The husband isn't presented as an evil, malicious man who actively torments his wife.
Right, he's not a villain.
He is something far more tragic. He's a man entirely subjugated by the system. He is a functionary, eager to please his superiors, completely lacking in passion, individuality, or intellectual fire. He is the human embodiment of the gray fence.
Oh.
He is a barrier of dull compliance.
That's a great way to put it. During the intermission, the husband steps out into the lobby to smoke, leaving Anna alone in her seat. Gurov realizes this is his only window. He walks down the aisle and approaches her. And the scene that follows is one of pure, chaotic, unpolished emotion.
It is the climax of the narrative's tension. She glances up, recognizes him, and her reaction is not romantic joy. It is absolute, paralyzing terror.
She is terrified.
Her face drains of color. She is squeezing her fan and her cheap opera glasses so fiercely it seems they might snap in her hands. She's struggling to draw breath. Driven by panic, she stands up and practically flees the auditorium, with Gurov following closely behind her.
They end up wandering aimlessly through the theater, but pay attention to where they are. They're running up and down these narrow, dark, twisting corridors and staircases.
Not glamorous at all.
Not at all. As they are having this massive, life-altering emotional collision, what is the environment? They are dodging school teachers and minor officials in cheap, badly fitted uniforms. They're surrounded by the stale, acrid smell of cheap tobacco and discarded cigarette butts.
Yeah.
They aren't on some grand, moonlit balcony.
Sure.
They are in a dingy-smelling stairwell.
Which is precisely the point Chekhov is making about the reality of human experience. The most profound, authentic, earth-shattering human emotions rarely happen in perfectly curated, poetic settings.
They happen in real life.
Right. They happen amidst the grit, the banality, and the awkwardness of real life. On a dark landing, she finally stops fleeing. She turns to him and admits that since Yalta, she has thought of absolutely nothing but him.
But the fear is still there.
Completely. Her fear overrides everything. She begs him to leave S immediately, promising that if he goes, she will find a way to come to him in Moscow. She makes the promise simply to get him out of the theater before her life is destroyed.
And that desperate promise acts as the pivot point for the final act of the story. It transitions them out of the realm of a vacation fling and firmly into the exhausting phase of the dual life.
Yes. Anna begins a routine of traveling from her provincial prison to Moscow every couple of months. To explain her absences to her husband, she claims she needs to consult a specialist for a vague women's ailment.
A convenient excuse.
And the husband, trapped in his compliant, naive nature, both believes her and doesn't believe her, but he lacks the force of will to stop her. When she arrives in Moscow, she sends a messenger to Gurov, and they meet secretly at a hotel called the Slavyansky Bazaar.
This arrangement leads us to what I consider the absolute philosophical peak of this entire deep dive. It happens on a snowy morning in Moscow.
Such a powerful scene.
Gurov is on his way to meet Anna at the hotel, but he has to walk his 12-year-old daughter to school first. They're walking through the snow, and even though the temperature is actually 3 degrees above zero, large flakes are falling.
Right.
Gurov uses this opportunity to give his daughter a little science lesson, explaining the difference in atmospheric layers, how it can be relatively warm on the surface of the Earth, but freezing in the upper atmosphere, which is why precipitation falls as snow.
On the surface, it's a charming, mundane father-daughter interaction. But internally, Gurov's mind is racing. He is using that exact scientific metaphor to process a profound epiphany about his own existence.
Connects it to himself.
Yes. He realizes that his life, too, is divided into completely different atmospheric layers.
Let's break down this dichotomy because it essentially serves as the thesis statement for the entire narrative. Gurov realizes he operates in 2 distinct realities. First, there is his public life.
The warm surface layer.
Exactly. This consists of the bank, his presence at the medical club, the polite dinners, the stilted conversations with his wife, and his carefully curated societal opinions. And looking at it clearly, he realizes that this entire public existence is fundamentally an elaborate lie.
It's all fake.
It is a protective shell, constructed from what Chekhov calls relative truth and relative deceit. It exists solely to maintain order and hide his actual reality.
Then, in the other layer, he has his private life. This is the life that flows in absolute enforced secrecy, the life he lives behind the locked door of the Slavyansky Bazaar hotel room with Anna.
The hidden layer.
And the devastating realization hits him. Everything that actually matters to him, everything that is sincere, vital, beautiful, and authentic, the absolute core of his human experience, happens entirely out of sight of the world.
As he thinks about this, he constructs a broader theory. He muses that perhaps every individual existence is based on a secret. He theorizes that this is the real reason civilized people are so incredibly anxious to have their personal privacy respected.
It's a fascinating theory.
It isn't just about modesty, it's because deep down, everyone knows their public face is a fraud, and their only true self is the secret they are hiding.
If we pull back and look at the broader implications, this is a scathing, devastating critique of 19th century societal structures, and arguably modern society as well.
Well, completely.
Chekhov is positing that the institutions we've built to organize human life, so traditional marriage, career ladders, social standing, public morality, they do not support the authentic human soul. In fact, they are fundamentally hostile to it.
They crush it.
Therefore, to be truly alive, to experience genuine love or authenticity, a person has no choice but to become a deceiver. Truth cannot survive in the sunlight of public scrutiny. It can only survive in the shadows.
I have to push back on this idea, or at least play devil's advocate to examine the reality of it. Is this model actually sustainable?
That's the big question.
Chekhov argues that society forces us into secrecy to protect our authenticity, but isn't living a lie 90% of the time incredibly destructive to the human psyche. Holding up that heavy public facade, constantly monitoring your words, looking over your shoulder, doesn't that immense cognitive dissonance eventually tear a person apart?
It absolutely tears them apart. And Chekhov is far too brilliant a writer to ignore that reality. He does not romanticize the dual life.
He shows the toll it takes.
In fact, the very psychological destruction you're talking about is exactly what greets Gurov when he finally arrives at the Slavyansky Bazaar after dropping his daughter off.
Right. He walks into the hotel, takes off his winter coat, knocks on the door, and enters the room. Anna is already there, wearing his favorite gray dress. But the atmosphere isn't one of joyful reunion.
No, she is exhausted.
She looks pale and diminished. She rests her head against his chest and simply begins to weep. She is crying from the sheer crushing exhaustion of maintaining their deceptive life.
And it's too much for her.
She tells him they are like thieves, forced to sneak around and hide from the world just to steal a few moments of happiness.
The burden of the dual life is visibly breaking her down. Gurov, reverting slightly to his pragmatic nature, tries to comfort her rationally. He tells himself to let her cry it out. He rings for tea. He tries to project calm.
He's trying to manage the situation.
But as he moves across the room to comfort her, he catches sight of his own reflection in one of the hotel room mirrors.
And what he sees in that mirror changes everything. He notices that his hair has genuinely started to go gray.
This moment of reflection is a masterstroke by Chekhov. He looks at his aging face in the glass, and then he looks down at the young woman weeping in his arms, a woman whose own beauty and youth are also inevitably going to fade, perhaps accelerated by the immense stress of this very affair. And he is struck by a profound, almost cruel sense of irony regarding his entire existence.
The irony is devastating. He realizes that he has spent decades playing the game, charming women, sleeping with them, leaving them, believing he was a master of romance.
He thought he was in control.
But staring into the mirror, he realizes those women never actually loved him. They didn't even know him. They loved a phantom.
An illusion.
They loved a projection created by their own imaginations, a man they desperately needed him to be to escape their own unfulfilling lives. And he, in turn, merely played the part they assigned him.
He had been an actor performing in his own life, but now, only now, as his hair is graying, as his youth is officially undeniably behind him, as his physical life is beginning its slow decline, he realizes he has finally, genuinely fallen in love for the very first time.
It's heartbreakingly tragic. The universe finally grants him the capacity for true, profound, authentic love, but only when he is aging, deeply entrenched in a marriage, saddled with a family, and entirely locked into a societal structure he cannot easily dismantle.
The tragedy is palpable, but so is the beauty of their transformation. Chekhov employs a very specific, poignant analogy to describe how they view themselves in this moment of clarity.
The birds, right?
Yes. They feel like two migratory birds, a male and a female, who have been caught by trappers and forced to live in separate, cramped cages.
Migratory birds. Creatures that are biologically engineered to fly vast distances, meant to cross continents together in the open sky, but are instead locked behind bars. Much like the gray fence with nails forced to look at each other through the wire of their respective cages.
The analogy highlights the inherent naturalness of their connection versus the deep unnaturalness of the societal constraints holding them back.
It's a perfect image.
In that hotel room, they reach a state of total vulnerability. They have forgiven each other for their past mistakes, for their deceptions, and they have been fundamentally transformed by the weight of this connection. The thick armor of cynicism Gurov wore for 40 years, the arrogant belief that women were an inferior race, all of it has been entirely burned away by the fire of genuine human connection.
So they're sitting there, drinking their tea, holding each other in the quiet of the room, and they reach a mutual consensus. They cannot keep living like thieves. The psychological toll is just too high.
They need a way out.
They have to figure out a way to break out of their cages. They need to formulate a plan to escape the deception, to somehow leave their spouses, to navigate the immense social scandal, and to finally live their lives together in the open.
And they talk, they consult with one another, they debate their options, they try to map out a future. But this brings us to the unresolved conclusion of the narrative, which is undoubtedly the most debated, discussed, and philosophically potent aspect of the entire story.
Because the story deliberately refuses to give us a real ending. It doesn't end with a dramatic, tragic suicide like Tolstoy's Anna Karenina.
Right.
It doesn't end with a romantic triumph where they board a train and run away into the sunset. It doesn't even end with a noble sacrifice where they decide to part ways forever for the greater good of their families.
No, the final lines of the text convey a sudden, intensely sobering realization that washes over both of them. As they plan their escape, they realize that the end of their struggle is very, very far away.
Yeah.
And that the most complicated, the most difficult, and the most agonizing part of their lives is only just beginning.
And boom. The story cuts to black.
Yeah.
That's it. Chekhov literally leaves us standing in the hotel room with them, staring up at a seemingly insurmountable mountain of incredibly difficult, messy, real-world problems.
The choice to end the narrative there is just a stroke of structural genius. By cutting off the story just as the actual grueling work of dismantling their false lives begins, Chekhov is violently rejecting the traditional, neatly packaged narrative arcs of 19th century romantic fiction.
He won't give us the easy out.
He refuses to give the reader the catharsis of a clean resolution.
Right, because actual life doesn't operate in clean resolutions.
Yeah.
You don't just decide to leave a marriage and instantly find happiness. There are lawyers, there are tearful children, there is financial ruin, there is social ostracization.
Exactly. Chekhov is communicating a profound truth. True love, and more importantly, the pursuit of authentic living, isn't defined by achieving a fairy tale happy ending.
No, it's defined by the work.
It is defined by the willingness to stand in that hotel room, to look clearly at the terrifying, messy, agonizing reality of the path ahead, and to decide to walk it anyway. The happy ending isn't the successful escape. The happy ending is the internal decision to finally stop lying to yourself, regardless of how difficult the consequences will be.
Let's take a breath and zoom out to look at the incredible journey we've just unpacked. We started in the bright, sunny, artificially cynical bubble of Yalta, watching a bored, arrogant banker look for a distraction.
And we watched that illusion shatter against the intense reality of a stifling hotel room and a man eating a watermelon.
We traveled to the edge of the sea at Oreanda, forcing ourselves to confront the eternal cosmic indifference of the universe, and surprisingly finding a strange, liberating comfort in our own complete insignificance.
We experienced the jarring, absurd transition back to the grind of everyday life in Moscow, realizing that the catalyst for a total existential breakdown doesn't have to be a tragedy. It can just be a casual comment about tainted sturgeon that reveals the emptiness of everything you do.
We journeyed to the suffocating provincial town of S, confronting the gray fence with nails, which stands as the ultimate physical monument to a repressed, trapped existence.
And finally, we arrived at that quiet, snowy epiphany in Moscow. The heartbreaking realization that the public personas we spend our lives polishing are often elaborate lies, and that our truest, most vital selves might only exist in the secrets we are terrified to share.
It is a masterful, unflinching exploration of the human condition. It strips away the romanticized gloss of affairs and presents the pursuit of authenticity with brutal, compassionate honesty.
It really does.
So, as we wrap up this exploration, I want to ask you to turn the lens inward for a moment. Do a little self-reflection. We all have them, whether we admit it or not. Look closely at your own life. What are your gray fences?
That's a hard question to ask.
It is. What are the barriers, be it a job that drains you, a relationship you've outgrown, or the heavy weight of societal expectations that are keeping you locked in a specific, unfulfilling role? And more importantly, is the face you show the world every single day just a shell?
Are you hiding?
Exactly. Are you hiding your truest, most vital self in the shadows, waiting for a chance to break the cage and fly?
It is an inherently terrifying question to ask yourself. But as Gurov and Anna ultimately discovered, it is perhaps the only question that actually matters if you want to look back and say you were truly alive.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We talked about how Chekhov ends the story right when the agonizingly hard work begins. Think about the people in your own life who seem to have it all perfectly figured out.
The ones with the perfect lives on paper.
The ones with the immaculate houses, the perfect careers, the flawless public lives. What if the most authentic, beautiful, and vibrant thing about them is something you will absolutely never see?
Wow.
What if the greatest love stories, the most profound acts of human courage of our time, aren't being written in public for everyone to applaud, but are quietly, desperately surviving in the hidden hotel rooms of the world?
Once you start viewing the world through that lens, it completely changes how you interact with everyone around you. You realize everyone is carrying a hidden universe.
It really does. It fosters a strange kind of empathy. So the next time you find yourself sitting in a meeting, entirely overwhelmed by the pressure to maintain your public facade, remember the roar of the sea at Oreanda.
The sea doesn't care.
Remember that the vast universe is entirely indifferent to your performance. The only audience that actually matters at the end of the day is yourself. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop chewing the watermelon, take a long, hard look in the mirror, and face the beautiful, complicated mess of the truth.